Today, the Below Average Joe's MMA show present the weekend preview. And there is no UFC this weekend. However, the show must go on. Carrying that load is none other than our other two favorite promotions. It's like picking a favorite son. There's always a favorite. But PFL season debut, the regular PFL, of course, and Bellator 293 in Temecula, California, I believe is the city. We'll also be talking about a lot of fight announcements, including the UFC has penciled it in. They are returning to London on July 22nd. All this and more, and it all starts right now. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another preview edition of the show. I am one half of this hosting duo. My name's Noah Baker, coming to you from Indiana for just a couple more weeks. Meanwhile, the man on my right, the man on your left, that's Dominic Salee. Hi, Dom. How's Ohio treating you?
It's treating me well, but I have a bone to pick with the state, actually. So I'm glad you asked, okay? Because the Battling Four Bogey boys had a little adventure yesterday on a Tuesday afternoon, evening. No rain, no clouds in sight. The course was busy, albeit, so we had to navigate around, let some groups pass, play through. Come on, we're doing stuff here. Anyway, we get going. We get videos popping. One done. Start on a second one. Out of nowhere, we feel little pivot or patter on the face. I'm like, well, what's going on here? Someone, what are you good? More noise?
Know. Yeah. I'm not going to say what I said to Dom off camera, but let's put it like this. One of my neighbors, I think, has some sketchy business going on. But continue.
Yes. So Noah's hearing things. I'm feeling things hitting my face on the golf course yesterday. And then all of a sudden, more and more and more torrential downpour rain sweeps in. The temperature drops 10 to 15 degrees easy. We weren't prepared for it. Our hands were frozen. For the first time ever, Noah, we had to cut a golf trip short. It has never happened. And this will be the fifth or sixth year of golfing, and it has never happened until yesterday. So it was just a wild adventure. That's just my bone to pick with the Ohio weather, but it's springtime. I guess I have to be prepared at all times. So I just had to put that out there.
I mean, April showers bring May flowers, Dom. So I don't know how you expect our flowers, our gardens to be so lively without. I know we're still in March, but you get my point.
It's basically
like,
April.
It's like when. All right. I wasn't going to say it, but now I feel like you kind of have to say it. Like I was going to say, like what we're at now for April showers, That's like I really can't say it, Dom. I'm just I'm getting stage fright here because now at this point I built it up too much and it's just gonna fall flat. Okay. I mean, it's basically, Dom, like if you're having sex with someone and then before you're ready to go, you just go. It's a little yeah.
All right,
what I'm saying that's what this time of year is.
Okay.
So you're in April showers, but it's pre-cum version of April showers.
Oh, brother. Welcome to the show.
What did I just tell you off recording? I said, Dominic, I think I've learned how to tote the line. I've learned how to make jokes that are edgy but also funny. And what do I do in the first 5 minutes? I'm talking about pre-cum. And
he panicked.
Anyways, sorry to Jaden if she's listening because
brother.
She's holier. She is thou holier than thou. I don't know. Very holy woman, and I hate to say those kind of words with her listening. But anyways, preview episode time.
Yes.
So we got our introductions out of the way. I'm glad to hear Ohio is just as much of a motherfucker as it was when I left it.
Yeah.
Because I will be back in a couple weeks. So I look forward to experiencing all of it in its glory. But Dominic, we are here to talk about two events that are not in Ohio. They are not in the Midwest, per usual
Unfortunately.
for MMA.
Yeah.
Yeah, Temecula, California. I hope it's Temecula because
It
I,
is.
for
It
some
is.
reason,
Yeah.
have that in my head. Is where Bellator 293 will be taking place on Friday, and then we have the PFL season debut Saturday in prime time, Dominic.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of excited for it. Obviously, we like to have as much UFC in our life as possible, but I think it's nice to see when the UFC doesn't have an event,
Yes.
they actually take advantage of this
Finally.
opportunity.
Yes. Yes.
And we even have boxing available on Fight Pass through Gamebred Boxing 4, which has a ton of former UFC stars and even boxing Hall of Famers on there. So that's
Mm-hmm.
Jorge Masvidal's promotion. So we'll be talking about a little bit about that later. But Dominic, are you ready to just get right into it?
Yeah, we got to right the wrongs here from Monday's show.
Yeah, is it bad that I almost skipped over it again?
I'm glad I said something then.
And there's really no excuse for it because Dominic, we're talking about Donald Cerrone, who we missed on our last episode. He was inducted, or he was announced to be an inductee for this summer's 2023 UFC Hall of Fame class, which includes the likes of Jens Pulver, Anderson Silva, Jose Aldo.
What a class, by the way, man.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I'll be honest, I was a little surprised by this one. Not surprised in the merit. Not surprised in like, oh, this is a very deserving person for a UFC Hall of Fame, because I think he embodies so much of what the UFC love about their fighters and the history of their sport. But it surprised me at just how quick he got in here. I mean, his last fight was less than a year ago, and it's I know, like in my head, I think I've become too accustomed to growing up watching other sports where there's always this like 5-year gap or whatever before you can be inducted. But despite my I guess relative surprise at the announcement, what surprised me even more, Dominic, was I actually saw like someone wrote an article for Bloody Elbow. I can't remember the name. I don't know if it was Jason Nash or who it was, saying that Cowboy Cerrone actually was not deserving of being a UFC Hall of Famer.
Oh, wow.
So I'm curious, like your kind of thoughts on the matter. Is it kind of a no-brainer for you, or due to some of the accolades that maybe he doesn't have? I think the most notable being a UFC championship. Is he one of those guys that's kind of on the fence, but due to his relationship with the powers that be, he gets in right away? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, man. I mean, I kind of put him in the same boat as like the Jim Miller conversation. I know we've had that on this show before, if he should be in or not. When you look at just, it's not even necessarily like it is the body of work. Don't get me wrong, but it's not the winning titles, defending titles body of work. It's the constant showing up, fighting the who's who of their divisions for over a decade. The records that they have for most fights ever, the most bonuses, most finishes. Cowboys specifically now with those last couple accolades. I mean, I don't care if you don't have a belt. If you have put on the shows and the performances that someone like Donald Cerrone has, I think you're deserving of it. I mean, he like you said, he just embodies not only the UFC, but just the sport in general, man. Like he loves this game. He loves the fight game. He's a perfect ambassador for the sport as well. I just feel like he literally checks every box except for he never held a title, but he at least challenged for one. So like that's even something Jim Miller can't say.
I think he challenged for 2. I think he
It might
challenged
have
for
even been 2. Yeah.
And if you want to include, I mean, because technically it's owned by the UFC now. If you include like WEC, he challenged for it there too, I believe. So
Also true. So I mean, I would disagree there. I think he definitely deserves it. Whether or not it should be now or in a couple years, I think is
it's
kind of irrelevant,
Yeah.
honestly. So would you agree? You think got to be in, right? Or do you kind of have a little bit of reserve?
Yeah. No. I at first I was like, I had to kind of dig deep for a second. I'm like, why am I so surprised by this?
Yeah.
And that's when I came to the conclusion, like, oh, it's just because of how quick he's getting in. But honestly speaking, like, I do believe he is a UFC Hall of Famer. It does not surprise me at all that he that he will be a UFC Hall of Famer. I think he's deserving of the accolade, the opportunity. I do kind of disagree with the Jim Miller comparison because I actually don't think Jim Miller is a UFC Hall of Famer.
I couldn't
But
remember what you were on
yeah,
when we talked
for
about it.
Cowboy, I felt like Jim Miller's never fought like. I mean, don't get me wrong, Jim Miller was really good back in the day, still fighting at a pretty good level. But I mean, he was never fighting like
Right, as
the
high.
best talents in the world. I mean, he never
Yeah,
was challenging for a title. He was never.
yeah,
I mean, Cowboy Cerrone at a time, Dom, was on the short list of the most popular fighters in the entire company. And yes, he
yeah.
never achieved the status of being a champion, but his presence, his body of work in the sense of who he fought. Because I mean, more than a guy like not. I'm not trying to diss Jim Miller here because I love him, but just you look at that body of work, the kind of names that he fought, and considering how long he did it, how many wins he was able to accumulate, how he remained relevant in the sport up until his last days. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he main evented a card in the beginning of 2020. This was
Yep.
his UFC career probably started around 2012, 2011.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and he would been competing in WEC before that, which was also probably the most prestigious organization for lower weight classes for a long time. So, I think for sure. I will ask you a question though. If this was, we have always had this little talk of like starting an MMA Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Do you think he gets in if it's an MMA Hall of Fame? Because I actually think then he would not.
Yeah, that really does go to show, by the way, how much the door gets opened when you
Right.
branch to all of mixed martial arts. Probably not, and especially not this soon after retirement. Like
Right.
for sure, maybe down the line, maybe, but I think I would lean the side of no for now. I
Mm.
think, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer here. That's something
yeah,
even Anderson Silva and obviously Jens Pulver can't say. So, I
yeah,
mean, that's part of the surprise factor for me. But I think Jose Aldo, yeah, he retired pretty recently too. So,
yeah.
I
That's
mean,
true, man. That's true.
it's if you can do it. I mean, since they don't have that in place, I don't mind. But
Just like with Habib, it was like instant too. The next
it
summer.
is going to
So
be weird though. If first, I don't. Part of me wants to believe that he's for sure retired. He even said he's on steroids now and is
I
just
saw
enjoying
that.
the
Yeah,
retirement life.
yeah.
But man, I hate it when people get put into a Hall of Fame and then they
Fight.
start
Yeah.
fighting again.
Or are still fighting even. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I guess I just really hope that maybe he feels good enough in his life that he doesn't need to do it anymore.
I feel like he seems so content, man. 3 kids, just on the ranch, you know what I mean? Like, he
Yeah.
just seems so happy to be done because he had talked strongly about that mental side of the sport and the anxiety and just getting to him over those last few years especially. I feel like he's probably done for sure.
Okay. All right. I'll if it's
I hope
wrong though,
yeah, I hope that
then
doesn't bite me in the
I'm
ass.
gonna be mad at you. No, I'm just kidding. But with that, Dominic, I think we did him justice there.
Yes,
Now
yes.
we can move on to this weekend's action, Bellator 293. I want to say it again in Temecula, California, because I think Temecula is a fun word to say.
Yeah, yeah.
But your main event, Marcelo Golm taking on Daniel James. Not exactly the names that pop off the screen, but we
Yeah.
actually have a little bit of a connection to this main event, Dominic,
Mhm.
because our first Bellator card we'd ever been to, main card featured one Daniel James, and he actually got and he was a Chicago native, by the way,
Yep.
and that's where the card was. And he actually got a second round knockout of Tyrell Fortune. Wasn't it
Man.
Tyrell Fortune, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And Tyrell Fortune, just a mainstay at the top of heavyweight for a few years for Bellator. Daniel James, kind of this unknown guy, 41 years old.
That was his
And
debut.
yeah, and then he goes in and knocks him out in the second round, got a huge pop from the crowd.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have a little bit of connection to this main event. I know it's not the most exciting main event, for what Bellator is capable of putting on. But Dominic, I actually think this card fills out a little bit more nicely when you look kind of underneath. Not every fight, I'm not sure if all these fights are going to end up delivering
Mhm.
like in the way you want them to. Like Kat Zingano, Leah McCourt. I like the fight. Those are two girls that have some name value, at least for Bellator women. Kat Zingano, especially, she
Yeah.
should be, in my opinion, probably fighting for the title, but they
Yeah.
have her here with Leah McCourt. You got John Salter, Aaron Jeffery. Aaron Jeffery, a very interesting guy, I believe. I think with a win here, he's actually potentially going to be fighting for a title. So a lot at stake there. And there's actually a lot of good prospects on this card to watch out for. So you can start on the main event, you can go wherever, but I'll just kind of open the floor to you, Dom. What fight, what fighter, what storyline is sort of sticking out to you here most?
I mean, I guess I'll start with Daniel James and Marcelo Golm in that main event. Daniel James, 41 years old. Like we said, he just debuted. When was it? No, November is when we were in Chicago, and he beat Tyrell Fortune by TKO. He's on a 4-fight finishing streak, all by KO, TKO, and he's kind of just all of a sudden, thrown into the deep end here. He's number 7. Marcelo Golm's number 5. I know the heavyweight title picture is kind of weird, but you just never know, especially at that age. He could get a big win and put himself right in the mix all of a sudden. Marcelo Golm, it's weird. I feel like I don't know as much about him, even though he's had 2 Bellator fights, and it's just the Daniel James effect from when we got to see him. But he's 2-0 in Bellator himself. I don't know if it's like, I want to say it should be relatively exciting. I even will say, for bet slip purposes, under 2.5 is actually minus 180. That seems like a playable line. We'll see if any of us end up taking a stab at it. But maybe it's exciting. I don't want to get my expectations too high, though. Is that fair?
I think that's a very good line, actually, because Marcelo Golm has 10 wins and all of them are via finish, Dom. So
Yeah.
I expect this to be a pretty fun fight. Again, it's hard to really know right now what the true stakes of this fight are. If someone
Yeah.
went in here and just put on a really good show, got a real good knockout, especially, to be honest, Daniel James, just because of I feel like the momentum he's built up a little bit.
Yeah.
The fact that they're putting him in a main event in his second fight in Bellator is somewhat interesting. I don't know if that's like, to me, I'm surprised that Kat Zingano, Leah McCourt's not the headliner here.
I
Kat
think I would
Zingano
agree. Yeah,
is the most identifiable name out of those 4.
for sure.
But to me, that says that they want to they want to prop up their heavyweights, which is something every promotion does. But also, they seem to believe in these guys a little bit. Marcelo Golm did not have a very successful run in the UFC. He went 1-3 during his time there, but he's only 30 years old. He's looked good in his 2 fights in Bellator. Obviously, 11 years younger than Daniel James.
Yeah.
And even with heavyweights, where heavyweight divisions, you can have guys in your late 30s, 40s, even, that perform really well. Randy Couture, back in the day, and even guys today that do it. But you do have to wonder, right? Like a guy like Daniel James, he did come in and have that real big moment, but it was a fight that he had lost the first round in, and then he kind of came back and caught Fortune. Can he do that again, or can he replicate that in some way? I tend to believe otherwise. I believe his line's actually not. I mean, it's not like a very big line, I don't think, right?
Marcelo Golm minus 150, Daniel James plus 130.
That's very interesting to me, because I tend to. I wouldn't have been surprised if Marcelo Golm was like double that. I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
I don't know if I feel confident enough in these 2 guys one way or another to
like
actually
play
lay
it.
money on it.
Yeah.
But there's a chance I may, considering there's no UFC this weekend, there's a chance Marcelo Golm money line could be the move. But I actually really like that under 2.5. I think that's a real solid option there for this main event. How about the co-main, Dom?
Yeah, I mean, what do we honestly make of this? Because I feel like we've talked about Kat Zingano, getting a title fight for a long time, and it hasn't happened. And maybe it just turns out that women's featherweight is just a shit show, no matter what organization. Maybe that is just the case. But she's 3-0 in Bellator since coming into the promotion, but only fought once per year. And I know she's had injuries and stuff, so I'm not, that is what it is. But she's still deserving of that title shot. It's just weird. We don't really hear anything of the champion, Chris Cyborg. So now Kat is fighting another person, now being Leah McCourt, who is a big name for the women's featherweight division. Don't get me wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, Leah, she is coming off of a win, but before that lost to Sinead. I couldn't remember what order they were in. So, I mean, it's a big opportunity for Leah, but I feel like there's a lot to lose for Kat, but then again, maybe a title shot's just not in the cards for her, so maybe there's nothing to lose. What do you make of this picture at women's featherweight at Bellator?
Yeah, it's starting to become a complicated issue for me, Dom, because I was very much like how you were talking right there, especially last year. I was like,
Yeah,
what are we doing?
yeah,
Not only is she probably the most recognizable name in your weight class outside of Cyborg, but she actually has the win streak in
hmm
Bellator that you could, and she's ranked number one. You can give her the
yeah.
shot, but now it's kind of getting to this point where how old's Kat Zingano now?
She is 40.
Yeah, I mean that's incredible. Like how kind of like what I said about Holly Holm, on our
hmm
last
hmm
episode. Incredible that she's able to still compete at a decently high level for her age, but
Right.
now it's at a point, Dom, where it's like, yeah, obviously I still would like to see her get that shot just because I feel like she's earned it.
hmm
But do I think she has a chance in hell of actually winning? Probably not,
Yeah.
and I've been wrong about that before, especially in these women weight classes. But I don't know why Bellator's not doing
Yeah.
it, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
because it probably should have been her when they gave a second opportunity to Arlene Blenko. That ended
hmm
up being actually somewhat of a fun fight, even though Cyborg swept the cards. But Dom, do you remember at that time Scott Coker came out and had already announced that Cyborg would be defending next against Sinead Kavanaugh in a rematch in the
Yeah.
fall, and then it just
Yeah.
never happened?
Never happened. And we
But
thought
he
that
had
was
like
super odd.
but I can't remember if he said that the night of or if he said it actually before the Blenko fight had even taken place, because it was
Right.
a really weird situation, I remember. But, yeah, Zingano just feels like she's in a bit of no man's land, but I kinda if she's not gonna fight for the title, Leah McCourt's a fun matchup, I
hmm
think.
Yeah.
That's her lone loss in Bellator was to Sinead Kavanaugh. Actually, she debuted for Cage Warriors, so she does come from high level,
hmm
regionally. Went 1-1 for Cage Warriors and has fought for Bellator ever since. She's obviously got, she's got the pretty face. Like she's got a lot of those traits that Bellator would love to have in their title picture,
Yep.
up at the top of the division. So it doesn't surprise me that they want to give her a big opportunity. Do I think she's good enough to beat Zingano? That really depends on how good Kat Zingano still is.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
If
so.
she fights as well as she did in her last couple fights, I think she should win this one pretty handedly. But if she slips, if she starts to show a little bit of decline, I could see Leah McCourt pulling off the upset here. That's really how it goes.
I like that. No, I like that. And you are high on Aaron Jeffery. Tell the audience
Uh,
why.
well, he had a really good finish in his Bellator debut, and he kind of has the personality to back it up. This is a guy that fought on the Contender Series multiple
Mhm.
times, actually lost both of his opportunities there. But, going up against John Salter, who fought Gegard Mousasi for the title,
Yep.
it's been about a year and a half ago, I want to say. John Salter's been really in that mix at the top of the division for a long time now. If he were to get a win there, if he were to get a finish there, then Dominic, I think there's no doubt Bellator wants to push this guy. Because I mean, in his second fight, he's fighting John Salter. I think that's very intriguing, and I like what I've seen from Aaron Jeffery. I really do. John Salter, though, I mean, not a pushover for anybody. He's got very good submissions. Aaron Jeffery going to try to knock you out on the feet. That's going to make for a very interesting matchup. And like, look at the odds, though, Dom. I didn't even see
Yeah.
these until they just popped up. I mean, that's actually very surprising to me that they are so heavily on Aaron Jeffery. Like, I figured those would have been super close,
Yeah.
but I think it speaks to how good he's looked after his second Contender Series opportunity. Like, he's really kind of came into his own here.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's on 3 fights in a row. He's won. He's 2-0 in Bellator. Let us not forget, he steamrolled Austin Vanderford last year. And that took
Mhm.
definitely me by
Yeah.
surprise because Vanderford was honestly looked at as like the second best guy outside of the champion in that
Yeah, he
division.
lost the title, and then everybody
It's,
thought he might just hold that spot down,
yeah.
number
Yeah.
one contender.
Dude, and Jeffrey just rolled right through him. John Salter on a 2-fight skid, but it's against Mousasi. It's against Johnny Eblen. This is like a pretty high level fight. I mean, this is a solid main card for Bellator here.
Mhm.
But do you think Aaron Jeffery doing what he did to Vanderford in a minute and a half, that's got to be minus 390. That's got to play a huge factor in these odds.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think they just look at Salter has shown more susceptibility than he had previously
True.
to he showed
Yeah.
less durability, I guess is what I'm saying. And that could be age, that could be, whatever. It could just be him getting exposed to a higher level competition, but he is 38 years old. I mean, he's
Yeah.
been doing this for a long time. But yeah, I think that is probably the biggest factor. You have the youth, Aaron Jeffery, a little bit younger. He's 30 years old, kind of right in his prime.
Mm-hmm.
He's riding a 3-fight winning streak. I mean, last 2 via finish. Like, he's looked damn good since actually that was his second fight in Bellator, Austin
Yeah.
Vanderford. I thought it was his debut, but 2-0 in Bellator, 2 finishes, and he kind of backs it up with the way he talks on the mic and stuff. Like, I think odds wise, it does surprise me
A little scary,
somewhat.
even, do you think, or no?
Probably, but I
Mm,
mean, I like him here for
yeah.
sure. But again, that's way too much juice for me to put money on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I definitely think that Bellator's eyeing this matchup. Like, if he gets a win here, it's Johnny Eblen next.
Yeah. I think so. I think so for sure.
Now, a lot of names that a lot of people probably won't be as familiar with on the rest of the card, Dom. Is there any sort of prospect or any name that people should be on the lookout for?
How about Archie Colgan?
Yeah,
Undefeated now.
that's what I was thinking too. Yep.
Hey, we got to see him fight, and he looked great. 50 seconds, TKO, done and dusted. He's 2-0 in Bellator, but he's fighting 5-0 Justin Montalvo. Now, let me check here on Justin. Let me confirm. So he's also 2-0 in Bellator, but Archie's odds are pretty high. I'm waiting for him to scroll across here, but he is a heavy favorite, and it's hard not to see the potential in this guy. He's got the wrestling pedigree, but he looks relatively complete at 27 years old, not even in his prime yet. I think that is a battle of two really, really good prospects. Don't let the odds fool you. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Colgan could go in and destroy again, but I'm at least interested to see what his opponent Justin can do, being that he's undefeated as well.
I like that. I'm actually going to go one fight underneath you, Dom. I'm going to talk about Joey Davis for a second. He's 8-0.
Okay.
I'm going to give a special shout out. Luke Thomas brought this to my attention. Joey Davis, Dominic, was a 4 straight year, I want to say, Division II All-American wrestler.
Okay.
Or no, actually, sorry. 4 straight Division II national champion, I believe.
Oh, even better.
He actually never lost a wrestling match in his college career. He went like 120-0,
Dude,
or something like that.
that's crazy.
And I remember from what I've seen from him in Bellator, he looks like an absolute stud, an absolute beast. He's fought. I mean, God, I haven't even seen a lot of these fights that he's done. He made his debut as a professional in Bellator, if that tells you anything. He's one of
Whole
those
career,
guys
man. Yep.
that's been born and bred in Bellator, honed his craft here. And Luke was even talking about on Morning Combat. He was like surprised that Joey Davis did not pursue, competitive wrestling more, because a lot of
Oh,
guys do that, like try to, I don't know about if Olympics is in the picture, but like getting to a point where you are like the top of the world in
right.
wrestling, because he had such an incredible run. Yes, Division II, but and I kind of knew this, but Luke did describe it like this. I kind of know with wrestling, like, and we've even seen it through guys that have come through the UFC or any of these other promotions. It's not the same as like a D2 football player compared to like a guy going to Alabama. Like,
Oh, no. Mm-mm.
there's a lot more really talented wrestlers that can probably hold up at a D1 program that are in D2, in NAIA, all that. And
Yeah,
Kamar
for sure.
Usman
Thank
out
you.
Kearney,
Yeah.
Nebraska. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So Joey Davis is a guy I'm going to be on the lookout for, going up against Jefferson Creighton at 6-3-1. Truthfully, I think there's a lot of names that could uh, definitely be on the lookout
I
for.
think
A
so,
lot of
man.
undefeated guys on this card. Lance Gibson Jr. 7-0. Lucas Brennan
Yep.
7-0. I definitely am getting a sense that much like a lot of Bellator cards do, Dom, they like to put these guys up against beatable competition, and then it's a bit
Yeah.
of a showcase. And I expect a lot of that here too.
Yeah, I think so.
So, anything else on this card before we move on to PFL?
I think it's good, man. I think they do really have a good, solid main card, though, for sure.
Yeah, I definitely overlooked it, but when you look at that main event, but I
Yeah.
think if you know what you're looking at with Bellator, there can be a lot of good stuff on here.
Mm-hmm.
But the real prize, it's PFL debuts, baby. We've already unfortunately for Bellator said PFL's number 2.
Mm.
Kind of like I said, you're choosing a favorite kid. Everybody has one.
Right.
But UFC is definitely number 1. I mean, Bellator's kind of the redheaded stepchild here.
Yeah. Right now it feels that way.
One FC's like the stepson who's on visitation hours like every other weekend, like because we don't talk about it every time they have a card, but
Yeah.
and then you got PFL and UFC, duking it out. But anyways, PFL debut Saturday night, ESPN Plus, light
Here we go.
heavyweights and featherweights. Dominic, we won't do like a full season preview because we're gonna have 2 more PFL cards to break down the next couple weeks. But featherweight and light heavyweight.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk about the top 2 fights, but then I'll guide the discussion a little bit differently. So your main event's Brendan Loughnane, last season's featherweight division winner and 2022 Joey Award winner.
Yes.
The first.
Yes.
Basically our fighter of the year, Brendan Loughnane. So he's back taking on Marlon Moraes, looking to bounce back from a tough debut in PFL's championship card last year. Meanwhile, in the co-main event, light heavyweight Rob Wilkinson last season. A bit of a mirroring of matchmaking here.
Yes, it is. It is.
Rob Wilkinson, last season's light heavyweight division winner, going up against Maheta Thiago Santos, who will be making his official PFL debut on this card. A guy who's only won 1 fight out of his last 6 in the UFC. Wow. Meanwhile, Marlon Moraes had lost 5 straight, all via finish. Actually, he had lost 5 of his last 6 as well, if you include that Jose Aldo win he had after losing to Henry Cejudo. So, despite the similarities in the booking here, you got champion versus struggling UFC contender, washout, whatever you want to call it, older UFC veteran. But yet, is it just me who feels like this co-main event's so much more appealing than the main event?
I think so. Yeah.
Like, honestly, I don't love the main event.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
The way Brendan's been looking and the way Marlon's been looking.
And this is the problem, Dom. I could see Marlon Moraes looking really good for a round here.
Yeah.
I could see him winning a round. I mean, the best 1-round fighter I've ever seen.
Yeah. Well,
you saw when he fought Shaman Moraes in his PFL debut, he had a great 2 rounds.
He looked really good. Yeah.
And then round 3, he gets caught. Unfortunately, I think he's still very talented. I just don't think he has the durability, the chin to eat the kind of shots and he's also just not defensively efficient enough or fast enough at this point to avoid the big shots. And I think that's bad here. I mean, Brendan Loughnane's not exactly a power puncher. He's more of one of those guys that kind of puts a pace on you, lets it build up, a bit of punches and bunches type guy. And I expect him to do that here, but Marlon Moraes is very vulnerable, and I could see Loughnane coming in here and just smashing him real quick. But in that co-main, Dom, I think it's so much more interesting. So much more interesting because Rob Wilkinson looks like a fucking hammer. The dude's really good.
Yeah.
But if there's one thing that guy has shown in his PFL fights, as fun as they've been, is that he will eat a shot. And
he'll bang.
Doesn't always make it look the cleanest either. I mean, he will get into some firefights. He will make anybody who bets on this guy is going to sweat it out, even though at the end of the day, he's probably going to cash it for you.
Yeah.
Thiago Santos, I said lost 5 of his last 6. Over under 40% chance Thiago Santos pulls off this upset.
Over under 40%. I'll say over. I'd say he's got like a 43, 44% chance, but hey, that's over, it fits the bill.
Sure.
First off, I love the move for Thiago to go to the PFL. It feels better for him than it even did for Marlon. And especially because Marlon went up a weight class. So it was just kind of even
Right.
more factors for Marlon. But I like this for Thiago. And then, like, I know he's been losing some fights, but they haven't all been like landslides. He's been relatively competitive. He even beat Johnny Walker. I know the fight was kind of a snooze, but he got a win. He's lost 2 straight against literally the 2 top, or 2 of the 3 top, if you will, Magomed Ankalaev and Jamal Hill. So, like, he's coming in here, obviously not momentum on his side, but I feel there's more for Thiago to give than what Marlon has to give. I think that's fair to say. Rob is a very dangerous man. He's won 6 fights in a row, and they're all by finish. And even before that, his losses in the UFC were by finish. The dude don't know what going to a decision is. Thiago, though, how often have we said it's hard to finish him? What Jamal Hill did last August is a rare thing
Yeah,
that we get
true.
to see. So, and Thiago has shown that, like, yes, he's the hammer, Maheta. He's been in some fun fights. He's put people's lights out, but he's also shown a more cautious side. And dare I say, he may need that side to have a chance against Rob. Because if he goes into a firefight with Rob, regardless of Santos's power, I think I would favor Rob's power. Thoughts?
Yeah, I probably would agree at this point, especially with the wear and tear age factored into Thiago. But I'll be honest, I think actually if he comes in and tries to be the more patient, less less likely to get into a firefight, whatever you want to call it, version of Thiago Santos that we used to see,
Mm-hmm.
I actually think that's going to go worse for him.
Okay.
Because the problem is it's not that he's patient because, I've called fighters patient because they're looking to pick the right shot. Marlon Vera is a patient
Right.
fighter.
Yeah.
Thiago Santos borders on being like scared almost. Scared's not the right word, but he borders on being like too passive
Right.
to the
Okay.
point where I almost feel like I feel like he's just nervous to even get into the pocket with some of these guys. He doesn't want
Mm-hmm.
to take a big power shot. You look at like the fight he had with Johnny Walker, where they both were doing that. It was a
Yes.
really bad
Yeah.
fight. Sure, like has he had his moments in some of these fights? Yes, of his losses, but even the Jamal Hill fight, like he didn't exactly have like a terrible performance.
Yeah.
But I do think the chance that's his best chance to win this fight is to turn it into a rock'em sock'em robot type fight. Would I still favor Rob Wilkinson? Yes.
Mm.
But we've seen even in Rob Wilkinson's run last season, he's been nearly put out like
Yep.
when he
Yep.
gets in some of these firefights. So he is not exactly like got this otherworldly chin. I mean, not that it's bad, but I mean, he is not the most defensively sound guy, especially
Yeah.
when he's fighting under that kind of style. Thiago, even if I trust Rob's power more, Dom, I might trust Thiago's chin more, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. And that's a weird dynamic there because Thiago's got the more losses and whatnot. But that's another factor here is as good as Rob Wilkinson has looked, this will be a good evaluator for how the PFL's light heavyweight division really stacks up because Rob Wilkinson has 2 losses in his professional MMA career, Dominic, and those are his 2 UFC fights. So
Yeah.
even though Thiago Santos was on the skid, he was also fighting the best light heavyweights in the world. Is Rob Wilkinson one of the best light heavyweights in the world? I'm not exactly on board with that yet.
Right.
But a win over Thiago, if he were to finish Thiago, that would at least get it in a direction where I think he could be in that discussion. And that's a good place to be in for if you're the PFL or Rob Wilkinson. So, and let me just ask you this. If we're kind of looking at just this whole season for these 2 weight classes, Loughnan's obviously going to be a favorite
Right.
to repeat. Let me ask you, who is in your mind, is the most likely competitor for Loughnane to win this featherweight division? And then is the winner of Wilkinson Santos the favorite for light heavyweight? And if not, who else in that light heavyweight picture is kind of, in your mind, a potential upset pick?
I think for the latter, they're the light heavyweight. The winner of Wilkinson Santos would be my front runner. Featherweight, though, Although we did have Brendan Loughnane, who just looked so good. He really had that year we really needed, and that helped him become the Joey for us. He had those big performances that we were waiting to see. But we've got the Chris Wades. We've got the Bubba Jenkins, who are fighting each other on this card, by the way, which is fucking fantastic. We have Ryoji Kudo. Oh, and Noah, guess who's back for this season? Movlid Kubalayev, 19-0. The man's never lost. He was out during the 2022 season, but he's back now. He was the champion in 2021 by beating Chris Wade. And oh, by the way, in the semifinals, he beat Brendan Loughnane. That's the storyline for the featherweight division this year. If those two can find that path to face each other, it's going to be big time. That is the other person I could see dethroning Brendan Loughnane this year.
Yeah, what's weird is when you look at it on the surface, Dom, I think a lot of people are going to look at that light heavyweight fight and say the winner of that's got to be the guy who's going all the way, because Wilkinson looked so good last year.
Yeah.
Thiago comes in being a former title challenger,
right?
A top level light heavyweight for a long time. And meanwhile, featherweight feels like the division that's kind of up in the air or whatever, has a guy that Brendan Loughnane that everybody likes, but there's a lot of good names around him.
Yeah.
Truthfully, Dom, I actually think it's kind of reversed. I think featherweight's the two-headed monster, Loughnane and Movlid Khabibulayev. Not that any of these guys are not capable of pulling out an upset. I really like Chris Wade, really like Bubba Jenkins, and both those guys, by the way, were beat by Brendan Loughnane in pursuit of that championship last season. So they're going to be looking to avenge those losses. But truthfully, I think Loughnane and Khabibulayev are the two most likely winners here. And I think there's a bit of a drop after you get to guys like Chris Wade, Bubba Jenkins, who one of those guys is going to get the lead, and one of those guys might fall out of the pack here. But light heavyweight, Dom, Rob Wilkinson, Thiago Santos, I would definitely agree the winner of that fight is the favorite. But I'll point out, I'm not a huge fan of his fight style, Dom, but right below him, Christoph Jotko is here. Big surprise.
There it is.
None of us saw that coming.
Yeah.
He seems like the kind of guy, though, that could very sneakily find himself at, he fights a very safe style. I could see him being kind of a tough fight for Rob Wilkinson or Thiago, to be honest with you. I still like Josh Silveira a lot.
Yeah, true. Challenger Series guy, right?
Yeah, he lost. Well, he lost to Omari Akhmedov in the playoffs last year, and it was a pretty dull fight. But before that, he was 9-0.
Yeah.
Hoping he can bounce back this year. And Dominic, I am going to throw a special shout out. I don't know if he can quite do it this season, but you said Contender Series. How about a little Impa Kazaganai opening up the card?
Now, is he in the season? Is that official?
I think so.
That's okay. I saw that he is debuting for them. Let me try and find out if he's in the season.
I thought I saw him. If you go to the PFL's website, I thought he's listed under the light heavyweight roster. But basically, Impa Kazaganai been a guy that I think me and Dom have been fans of back to when he fought for Contender Series for the UFC.
Yes.
Unfortunately, he ran into some tough matchups in the UFC. He got put on a poster for life. In one of his, why did I forget who he lost to there?
It was Joaquin Buckley. Yeah,
Joaquin Buckley, and then actually got knocked out by Carlston Harris, who's another very good fighter. So then he kind of left the UFC. I remember him fighting for Eagle FC, who has fallen off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
And then ended up on Challenger Series, got a contract, and here he is fighting for the light heavyweight title, right?
They don't even, on the website I'm looking at, he's not even listed on here right now. So we'll do some editing here and find out if he's in.
Well, supposedly the point of the Challenger Series, you get a contract for, like, the point is you get a contract to be in the season. So I'm going to assume he's in the season. But we've had weird situations pop up with them in seasons past. Don't forget how they tried to screw our boy Carlos Leal last season.
Very true. Very true.
But yeah, I mean, I just think that this light heavyweight division's got a lot of guys that feel like they could, potentially make a run at this. Even a guy like Mohammed Faretdini, I think is how you say it.
Mm.
I don't know much about him, but you look at the record, honestly, you just look at the name, and you go, okay, this guy might
Yeah.
cause some problems. But Martin Hamlet's been around for a while.
Been in the championship before. Yep.
Yeah, so there's a lot of names in this light heavyweight division outside of just that co-main event. But I definitely think the co-main is going to really set the tone for who's the heavy favorite going the rest of the way.
Yeah. I'll say, man, like both Bellator and PFL both kind of knocked it out of the park with solid cards on an off weekend for the UFC. I'm here for it.
Yeah, I only wish that Bellator just had a little bit more of an intriguing main event.
Right.
But Bellator's, they're bound to do that every once in a while. They do. This is kind of their version of like a fight night almost.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can't complain too much. But yeah, definitely looking forward to both of these cards, Dom. We're actually going to talk about one more card, surprisingly. If the UFC had a card this weekend, we might just kind of mention this in passing. But on UFC Fight Pass, you can buy Gamebred Boxing 4.
Oh, boy.
That means there have been 3 others that I have not seen.
Also true. Yes.
But this is really the one that's gotten a lot of promotion behind it. It's only the second time the UFC's ever been partnered up with a boxing event. The first, of course, being Mayweather-McGregor. So that makes this kind of interesting. And this is the boxing promotion run by Jorge Masvidal, a man of many promotions.
Yes.
And it's featuring a lot of former UFC stars across the board. Dominic, your main event, Roy Jones Jr., actually, at a spry 54 years old.
Yeah.
Taking on Showtime, Anthony Pettis. I mean, what?
That's something I wouldn't have expected on the bingo card for this year.
Yeah,
I'll tell you that.
just definitely not. Some other notable matchups on this card: Jose Aldo taking on Jeremy Stevens, a rematch from one of their previous MMA fights, actually. Shout out Jose Aldo, by the way. Going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, and now he's boxing, so that's great.
Yeah.
Vitor Belfort taking on the Jiu-Jitsu black belt Jacare Souza.
Yeah.
You got Pearl Gonzalez taking on Gina Mazzani. I'm trying to think if there's any. Eric Perez is lower on this card, or Marcus Perez, excuse me, taking on Joe Riggs Diesel. I just think all I think of him is him and Nick Diaz getting in a fight after they had already fought that night. They fought at a UFC event. They both get transported to the hospital, and then they fight again in the hospital.
It's just some people are built different. It's in the
really
blood.
Recommend. I know a lot of people probably don't watch a ton of the Fight Pass original programming. Highly recommend. That was like their first episode of that show that they do. I forget. It's like they do like an animated thing on Fight Pass, but it was the first episode of that. It's hilarious. It's really funny stuff. So these guys are all on the card, Dom. So I'm just curious. I know you're not big into boxing, but is this something that could become like somewhat sustainable for? Is there a market for this, you think?
I mean, I feel like we've seen over the past couple of years there is some sort of market. I don't really know how big or how small, but people seem to like this stuff. Now, this one, all credit, is not as lopsided, not as bad as some of the other ones we've seen. I mean, don't get me wrong, Vitor Belfort should not be boxing Ronaldo Jacare Souza, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, like Noah said. But other than that, I mean, not that Roy Jones Jr. versus Anthony Pettis is, competitive per se, but at least the younger guy in the fight is Anthony.
Here's the problem, Dom. You want to say like that's a terrible matchup because it kind of is, but I don't know who's the victim in this matchup. Is that so? Then therefore,
it feels like it should be Anthony, right? But
but Roy Jones is 54 years old. Like
exactly.
So I really can't say it's like terrible because there is some intrigue there. Because here's the problem. I feel like no matter which way that fight goes, it's going to be kind of a shit show and it's going to be kind of sad. But I don't know who's going to be the one I'm sad for.
Yeah.
So there
Yeah.
is some intrigue, but it's not intrigue that I really want.
I no, I feel you. I feel you. And but I'll say this though, Aldo Stevens,
That's a
I
great
kind of
fight.
fuck with that one,
I
man.
fuck with that one a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really and when you look at the fight that they had, it was heavily in the striking. Jose finished
Yeah.
Jeremy with a nasty hook to the body, so that could actually be really, really fun and competitive. So I mean, maybe there is something to this. Maybe these types of cards can have a future, maybe even on UFC Fight Pass. Maybe they'll see how it performs and go from there. But again, when we talked about it when it got announced, however long ago, I remember not being as you know hot-headed. Not that I get that hot-headed, but about this one as I was to others outside of the Jacare fight. So, I don't really have too big of an issue with this.
Yeah,
Unless,
I mean, it
hopefully
makes
nothing
me
bad happens.
it does make me feel like a hypocrite sometimes because like we just talked about Marlon Moraes, right?
Mhm.
And I'm like, I don't want this guy fighting anymore.
Mm.
But if he were on this card, I probably wouldn't be saying that. And I think some of that's due to the level of competition. I mean, don't get me wrong, a guy like Aldo, Jeremy Stevens, even Anthony Pettis, like they're a little shock worn, but they can still go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Marlon Moraes like can still go to a certain extent, but
Right.
going up against Brendan Loughnane is just not a good idea.
Right.
It's just a bad matchup. He's too good at this point. So, I bought and liked the Roy Jones Jr. Mike Tyson card, and that was kind
Oh
of in this,
yeah, I remember that.
which is kind of what kicked off Jake Paul in a sense.
Yeah.
So you can kind of thank me, Dom, for Jake Paul beating Anderson Silva in a weird way.
Oh boy.
Well, anyways, I like this because it gives some of these guys who get to a point where they can't really compete at a high level in MMA anymore because there's just so much going on. There's so many aspects that you have to continuously train and hone your
Yeah.
craft on. This gives them another avenue to make money
For
and
sure.
continue competing. And I support it. I would rather see this than like an old man or retired man's MMA league.
Yeah.
Like MMA is just so brutal, right? It's just so much more, there's just so much more ways to lose and
Yeah, the complexity. Yeah.
yeah, and I just scientifically speaking, I'm sure, like Dana always likes to point out about how many times a boxer gets punched in the face each fight and
Yeah.
or punched in the head, and that's not good either. But if these guys are going to continue competing, I kind of like that this is an avenue, this is a place that they can go.
Yeah.
Do I think it's very sustainable? I mean, I'm kind of pessimistic about it, Dom. I got all excited about Eagle FC. I mentioned them earlier.
Mm.
Now their entire promotion's on pause.
Yeah.
They haven't been back to America, I believe, since that Kevin Lee Diego
Yeah.
Sanchez fight. Like I'm not getting too excited because I think what we've learned from all these promotions that have came and went over the years, it's really fucking hard to make
Oh
a
yeah.
profitable MMA promotion.
For sure.
Remember the WFL, the World Fighting League that Ariel Helwani had mentioned?
Yeah.
And it was going to be the league that was going to give health care and going to be
The
like
future of the sport.
yeah, it was going to really be like this business for the fighters. And now that's just fallen off the face of the earth too.
Haven't heard a thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Ariel's not heard a thing either.
Yeah.
So that's why I know this isn't MMA, it's boxing, but it's very dependent on an MMA fan to watch.
Right.
I mean, Roy Jones is on there, but outside of that, it's a lot of former UFC,
Right.
Fighters.
Yep.
And what's weird though is you would think like I'm an MMA fan and a boxing fan,
Mm-hmm.
and I know you're more MMA, not really much boxing. I think more MMA fans are like you. Like you would think there's a lot of crossover appeal because
Yeah.
MMA, boxing, combat sports. But I actually think a lot of MMA fans kind of don't like boxing.
It's like you either like really like both or
Mm,
you really like one and just don't really not
yeah.
even that you dislike the other, but you just don't watch it or go out of your way to watch it. You know what I mean? Like there's no in between, it feels like.
I think a lot of people, I could be wrong about this. This is very presumptuous of me. A lot of people that used to have that mentality, the ones that were fans of boxing first, and MMA came on the scene and they kind of were like, the human cockfighting, like get it out of here.
Yeah.
I think a lot of those people have came around to the point where they kind of do like both. I actually think it's the people that started as MMA fans who just still have like this distaste towards boxing, and I think it has a lot to do with some of the things that we have been spoiled with as MMA fans. For the most part, we've gotten the fights we've wanted to see. We get the big matchups that we're hoping to get. Boxing has had times where you get a lot of that. Right now, for example, it's a
Yeah.
pretty good time to be a boxing fan. Outside of Usyk, Fury, that's a pretty big miss, and Spence Crawford. But besides that,
Yeah, right, right.
there's a lot of good fights coming up that are fights people want to see.
Yeah.
But not every era of boxing has been that way.
Yeah.
In the UFC, there are a few misses we've had. We've had the Fedor and Brox. We've had some of these fights that should have happened and just never did. Nate Diaz, Dustin Poirier, Habib, Tony, you know. But for the most part, you get the fights you want. And I think that plays a factor in why a lot of MMA fans don't have a hard time getting into boxing. I also think the structure, you've talked about this, it's a bit daunting when you have so many champions and
All the belts, all the organization.
each boxing commission has a title, but then you'll have you'll have a champion, but then you'll have an interim champion, and then you'll have like an intercontinental champion, and then you'll have a what do they call it, like a worldwide champion. Like it gets very confusing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that plays a factor too. So I don't I want this to work. I want to support it. I'm gonna support it. And I hope it works. But it's hard to be optimistic that it's gonna work. I'm gonna support it. I'm not gonna piss on it.
Right.
But I also hope that everybody comes out of this. I hope it's run well. I hope it comes out to where this isn't a complete shit show. It has the potential of being that, but I'm just gonna hope that they know these people that are putting it together kind of know what they're doing.
Well said.
All right. So with that, Dominic, let's move on to the fight announcements portion of the show. Got a couple here. A couple things that don't involve actual fights. I'll just get your thoughts on these first. UFC will be returning to London on July 22nd. That's official. UFC's been doing 2 pay-per-views in July the last few years. That may have been always a staple, but especially the last few years. I presume this will be a pay-per-view, and this will be when you get Colby versus Leon. But also, this is a little cleanup from Dana's post-fight presser last weekend. He was asked about UFC Mexico, and Dominic, even though we have technically 3 Mexican-born UFC champions, he said a UFC event in Mexico is unlikely for 2023. So my question for you, how big of a missed opportunity is this for the UFC?
I'd say I think it's a big opportunity missed. I think so. And maybe it just comes down to all that logistical stuff, you know what I mean? And the schedules of all of them. Because ideally, they would put all 3 on the same card. But Volk's pretty big right now. So I don't know if you would even mess with putting that one on the card. So it gets kind of
Right.
iffy. But I think, yes, all in all, it sucks that we're not. This is the biggest year for a single country that we've seen in quite some time, maybe ever in the UFC, with 3 champions all getting them 3 straight months in a row. So to capitalize on that with an event in Mexico would be absolutely huge. You look at all the work that they're doing, all the young prospects coming in from Mexico. It seems like it's just a perfect storm to do that right now. And then the problem being that you don't get it done this year is you have to rely on them to keep those belts to have a really big show there in 2024. Not that you need all 3, but ideally you have all 3. So it
Yeah.
sucks as a fan. Go ahead.
I mean, I don't think they would do 3 title fights on that card, especially because Yair's an interim champion. Volk's not fighting in Mexico. Volk and him are probably fighting International Fight Week, but you still have 2.
Yeah.
I don't think they would do 3 title fights on a Mexico card. I mean, they saved those for there's 3
International
cards a
Fight Week
year.
or
Yeah. Madison Square Garden, last fight or the last show of the year. Those are really the 3.
right.
So, I mean, but 2 for sure. It is still a missed opportunity, even if you take out the Yair, fighting there. Yeah, I mean, I kind of say a lot of the things you said. Like we don't really know, logistically speaking, why this can't work for this year. It's sort of like when the UFC missed out on doing something in Africa when they
Yep.
had 3 African-born champions. So it feels a little bit like that. Part of me believes it probably has something to do with COVID, like COVID guidelines or protocols, because different parts of the world are different.
Mm.
Mexico, is also, I mean, I don't know what's going on in Mexico. I don't know what kind of logistical issues that could pop up over there that
And just being in a
we,
different country rather than a different
yeah.
state is probably
So I'm
such a
not
massive difference.
blaming anybody, but you can't help but say it's a missed opportunity. But
Yeah.
also at the same time, it can be salvaged, and here's why. From what I've seen, Mexican fans travel.
Oh yeah.
Now, I'm hesitant to say, well, why don't you do the card you would do in Mexico in like Texas? Because
Hmm.
then you have to deal with the Texas Commission.
Yeah.
But how about Arizona?
You could do Phoenix. You could do Southern California. Yep,
They will travel for that card.
for
If
sure.
you put Moreno, didn't Moreno fight in
Moreno
Arizona
fought. Yep. Yep.
and got a very big pop? Or was that
Yep.
actually he fought in Dallas too last when he
I
fought
think
for the
he's
interim
honestly fought
title?
both. Yeah.
So clearly, like he feels like a big deal in these places, and that's because their fans travel. It's not that far from the border. A lot of people that grew up in Mexico have now since moved
Yep.
into those southern states. And again, I don't want to commit to Texas because
Yeah.
until they let that referee go,
They're in timeout right now.
then we're not committing to them. But
Yeah.
Phoenix, there we go.
Yeah.
Now we're talking. Glendale, whatever,
Yeah.
just somewhere in there. And you put Moreno, you put Grasso on there against Shevchenko or whoever, like it's going to be a pretty big deal. And then you can fill it out with some of your other Mexican talents. Like
Hmm.
Renee Aldana could be on there if
Yep.
she's not fighting for the title, whatever. So yeah, I still think it could be salvaged, but that would be the compromise. It wouldn't actually be in Mexico.
Yeah. And that's what's funny about the not irony necessarily, but it's like, well, they shoot down going to Mexico, but we're turning right around and taking this shit back to London again in July, just like they did last year. Dude, the events perform so well there. The action is so good. The crowd is so hot. They just have to strike with it. So you think for sure like Leon, back-to-back headliners in London,
Oh yeah.
bam, for sure.
I mean, and
Yeah.
what else are you gonna do as the headliner on that
No,
card? Because I
I
think
agree.
I mean, I'm pretty sure even Dana said, like, because I think someone asked, like, since you have a English champion, does it make the most sense to continue bringing him back here? And he's
Every
like, yeah,
time.
of
Yeah.
course. He's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's for sure what I think's happening.
Yeah, and I think hopefully by then, maybe even a guy like Tom Aspinall's healed. That'll be a year. Other English fighters, Paddy Pimblett, I think wants to return in the summer
He
or
just had his
fall.
surgery, so I don't know
Yeah,
what his timetable was, but he called out Jared Gordon for a
I
rematch. I
saw
don't know if
that.
you saw
Kind
that.
of twisted the narrative. Got kind of shit talking with him now, but I don't doubt that whenever they go there, it's going to be loaded with UK talent, and the
Yeah.
crowd's going to go bananas.
Yeah. The other fight announcements, we actually have a denouncement first off. The Leech, his string of bad luck continues. This time he's out of his fight with Michael Chiesa for April 8th, UFC 287. There has not been an announced replacement. Kevin Lee came out and claimed that he had asked to fill in and that they had turned him down, but then Chiesa's coach came out and said that wasn't true. I don't
Mm.
know. So it's unclear if Chiesa will stay on the card. And then Dominic Bellator announced they're going back to Chi-Town this
Yeah.
summer. Unfortunately, it's the day of my aunt's wedding that I will be in Panama City Beach. So
Yeah.
at least I will not be returning to Chicago for this event, Bellator 297. But it is a great doubleheader.
Fuck yeah, man.
June 16th, Vadim Nemkov taking on Yoel Romero in the main event. And Dominic, that's a great fight. But I think the rightful main event's right underneath it. Sergio Pettis is back, and
Against
it's against Patricio Pitbull, the featherweight champion.
and prior to that, the lightweight champion. Wait a
That's
minute
right.
now.
Patricio Pitbull is looking to become the first man in any major MMA promotion to hold 3 division titles.
You want to talk about some shit that absolutely came out of nowhere. It's
Well,
they just casually like back to Chicago. Wait, Pettis versus Patricio Pitbull. Where'd that come from?
And isn't it hilarious? Like, we're just a few weeks away from Rafael Stotts, your interim champion,
Literally, yeah.
taking
yeah.
on who's he?
It's about Patchy.
Patchy Mix. Why I'm
Yeah.
always be blanking on these damn names, but they'll be finishing up the Bantamweight Grand Prix, so it's kind of funny that's going to finish up, and then a few months later you're going to have a fight for the actual title. But let me tell you something. This seems like the kind of matchmaking that if the UFC pulled something like this, I might criticize. And I'll admit, maybe that makes me, maybe that makes me, again, a hypocrite. But I see Bellator doing this, and I look at it to Dom like, you know what? I respect that they're going for it.
They're doing something big. Yeah.
They're doing something big. It's different. It's not something you see a lot of here. And obviously, there's
No.
a huge storyline with Patricio Pitbull going for that third division title. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck yeah, Bellator. Do more shit like this. Like, just go for it. This is a lot of people have been saying it's a bit Strike Force esque in the matchmaking. And that's why, you know what? I respect the hell out of it. And Dominic, I actually love the fight. I love it. I love that they're doing it. Obviously, like, the timing's a little weird because you got an interim title fight that's going to happen a couple months before this. But, I'm not going to think too hard about it because that tournament got extended. It got pushed out. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Sergio has been hurt.
But all that matters is the winner of Stotts and Mix will fight the winner of this fight.
And it makes that, true finale that much bigger, wouldn't you say? So
It kind of
in a
extends
way,
the tournament in a way.
it does. And if Pitbull were to win, I mean, holy shit. The eyes that were already on the Grand Prix are just going to be even bigger for that final fight,
Yeah.
I guess, if that's what you want to call it. Respect to Sergio, too. Like, he's
been
been
out.
injured, and now he's choosing to not, face the winner of Mix and Stotts, but he's like, fuck it, dude. Patricio. This is a huge opportunity for Sergio to like really be the legend here and solidify himself.
Well, Dominic, let's not forget the way he won his title was in a fight he was losing pretty handedly. And then he got that Hail Mary finish against Horiguchi. So he's still kind of looking for that win to legitimize himself as a champion. Like right now, I think a lot of people, even though he ended up falling out of the Grand Prix, I don't think a lot of people were picking him to be the winner of that Grand Prix.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is someone like a Stotts or a Mix that people were picking, but now he's going to be fighting Pitbull. My only gripe, not even a gripe, but my only pessimism, it's got to be the weight cut. It's got to be the weight cut for Pitbull to go to 135 pounds. The dude wasn't necessarily a small lightweight. He damn sure wasn't a small featherweight. And now he's going to bantamweight. He's got, the fight's in June. So 3 months, maybe just gradually start now building that bantamweight mold. And then
he seems very confident about it, which maybe, that's probably not abnormal, but Dominic, I'm not even going to think about it. I'm not even going to think about it. And that means if it does blow up in our face, it's going to hurt me even more because I'm not thinking, but I refuse to even acknowledge that as a possibility. Because Patricio Pitbull, the utmost professional.
Yeah.
Never been a guy that's had issues in this avenue. But it's also a new weight class. You can say you told me so if it happens, but until then, zip it.
Throw away the key.
But no,
also, Nemkov Romero, by the way, fucking awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. And again, this was a fight we were going to get earlier,
supposed to be in
right?
February.
Yeah. So, Nemkov, he seems like one of those guys outside of the UFC who could have a claim to being one of the best light heavyweights in the world. Yoel Romero, man. I don't care what you think of the guy in terms of what he has left. Dude's an absolute freak. And he scares the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that needs to be said about that? I don't know if Yoel's going to win, but he's going to scare the fuck out of me by just standing there if that's all he does.
There it is.
All right, let's talk about the below average bet slip. But oh wait, we're recording this on Wednesday, so no plays. But I just want to remind everybody, follow us on Twitter,
on
Instagram,
Yep.
on TikTok, although
Yep.
that might be getting banned here soon.
Yeah.
At the Bajma.
Correct.
I almost said my own at, not what I wanted to do. At the Bajma, the BAJ MMA on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, unless it's banned. We will be posting on the Twitter our entire bet slip probably the day of. Well,
It would be
probably at least
Friday.
we'll probably at
It-
least, depending on when lines get released, we'll probably
True.
at least have the Bellator lineup for Friday, PFL on Saturday. We'll have bets for all of them. It just depends on when they get released, those lines. So
I kind of want to get a little. I kind of want to hammer some plays this weekend. Now I'm going to be honest with you. Maybe that's the bad idea, but I
mean,
want some action.
Get that heavy favorite parlay together for Bellator.
Oh, you already know that's in the books. Yeah, yeah.
I'm hoping there's a little bit of Gamebred Boxing 4 lines. I ain't afraid to throw a few bucks on it now. I can't even imagine what the Roy Jones Anthony Pettis line would be like.
I can't truthfully imagine any of those three lines, to be quite honest with you.
It's ridiculous. But yeah, make sure to follow us there. You can also follow me on all those platforms at Noah Baker MMA. I think I finally found I'm going to stick with. I think that's like the 5th rebrand I've had in
like 6 months.
Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, Dominic is still at Diesely 14. It's been the same at 14 was his high school football number. He ain't changed it.
Long time now, yeah.
Yeah. But that's where you can find all of us. We'll post the pics on the Below Average Joe's Twitter. Dominic, with that, we will move on to our final segment of the day. It is time for closing statements.
Yes, it is.
Point of the show where me and Dominic talk about anything and everything, MMA related or not. Dominic, what do you got for me?
WrestleMania 39 this weekend, Noah.
I mean, can Dominic can't make it through one day in our group chat on the podcast without making some sort of reference to wrestling. I mean, Dominic, I thought I knew you pretty well, but the longer I've gotten to know you, what I've learned, what Dominic likes more than anything else is that he loves taking a big old whiff of nostalgia. You get nostalgia on this man. I mean, it is like cocaine. He is doing it out of a hooker's ass, that nostalgia.
Oh, yeah.
So WrestleMania 39.
Wow. It's this weekend. I tuned in last year, but not for the full thing. I know Stone Cold was back last year.
Yeah, you fucking missed Stone Cold.
I watched it.
No,
I watched
you missed
Stone Cold
it.
versus
You
I
missed
watched it live. Stone Cold versus Jake.
I remember you missing it, and I had to tell you that it happened.
I literally watched it on the couch with Jaden and my dad. But anyways, this year, I might watch both nights all the way through. Fucking Lita, Trish Stratus is back. We got Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, humongous matchup there. Edge is in a Hell in the Cell match. I mean, goodness gracious. John Cena's facing Austin Theory. This is a fun card, not only for nostalgia purposes, right? Even Brock Lesnar's on the card. So some of our guys from our era are on the card. But Noah, we've talked off recording even about some of these storylines that have been going on. Kind of tug us just a little. Just enough to where we're at least intrigued seeing some stuff on TikTok. And I'm like, okay, this sounds fun. The Uso story with Sami Zayn and them. So no, I just had to bring it up. And also, was there a question that I wanted to bring in? Maybe
something about WrestleMania, like
what would be?
I'll let you ask, and then maybe I'll ask a question off that.
I'll say there's been so many matches; it's hard to ask for a match.
This is what I was about to ask.
Okay, let's open the floor then. Favorite WrestleMania match or even moment, maybe, if that makes it easier. Maybe it makes it harder. Let's just open the floor here.
Yeah, so I'm not sure which one it'll be because there's two of them. So you have WrestleMania 16, year 2000. They did the triple ladder match, Edge and Christian, Hardy Boys, Dudley Boys, or WrestleMania 17, TLC 2.
Oh, man.
First TLC match was SummerSlam that year. They did the second one at WrestleMania. Same three teams. Either one of those two. I mean, that has been the match I've probably seen the most in my life.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, that raised the bar for tag teams, for obviously ladder matches. I
Mm.
mean, that did a lot. I kind of want to give you a singles match to kind of,
Okay.
but I'll let you. Do you have an answer that you want to give off the top of your head?
That TLC 2 is definitely up there. The spear off of the ladder, Matt and
Yeah.
Bubba Ray going through 17
Yeah, I don't
tables out
remember
on the
which
ramp,
because those moments, some of
Yeah.
them happened in one and some of them happened in the other, so I don't
Mm.
know which one is probably my favorite, but either one of those two matches.
I really, really enjoyed Ric Flair's final, even though it wasn't his final match with Shawn
Mm.
Michaels. That was a really special match with a really special build up. The
Yeah, that was a
Rock,
bit after my time. That was a bit
yeah,
after me.
that might have been like right after you ended, kind of.
Yeah,
That was toward, I guess, when I was heading out with the fandom. Rock Hogan WrestleMania 18.
yeah.
Holy fuck! I've never seen a crowd pop. I don't think like that one. I think the one that gives me the most anal goosebumps would be Rock Hogan WrestleMania 18. That's a special, special type of feel, special match. I know I just kind of rambled three, but I think if I had to pick one, I'll go that one.
For some reason, the match I just thought of was Battle of the Billionaires at WrestleMania
Yeah,
23.
yeah.
Bobby Lashley versus Umaga, Vince McMahon versus Donald Trump. Wild times,
Hey
people.
man, never forget Floyd Mayweather versus the
Yeah,
Big Show.
big
By the
show.
way, that was
Yeah.
a good one too.
Paul
Woo.
Bear used to, or not Paul Bear, sorry. Pete Rose used to like every year get tombstone by Kane.
Yeah.
If I had to pick a singles match, hmm, that's a tough one to be honest with you. Like I've always just known that those two ladder matches are like
You know
my
what another great one is? Not a singles, sorry, but I'm just kind of maybe getting the
mhm.
brain flowing. The very first Money in the Bank at WrestleMania 21 is a memorable one because that kind
I'll
of
tell you
kick-started something big.
a couple that stick out to me that are that and I don't know if the actual match is like all time, but they were very monumental, and that would
Mm,
be Steve Austin, Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Bret Hart in
yeah.
I think it was a submission match. The match ends with sharpshooter from Bret Hart, the blood's going in
Yeah.
down the face of Stone Cold. He doesn't tap, he passes out, match over. That's how they pulled off a double turn. Bret Hart went into that face, went into that match the good guy. Steve Austin was the bad guy. After that match, Steve Austin was kind of good guy, but like,
Yeah.
Bret Hart, bad guy. So they pulled off the double turn. It's a very rare thing in wrestling. Also, how about Steve Austin versus Shawn Michaels the following year,
Yeah, that's a big one. I
WrestleMania
saw that today,
14?
actually.
Mike
Yeah.
Tyson as a special guest enforcer or
Mhm,
whatever. He popped Shawn Michaels in the face. I mean, that
mhm.
really kicked off the Stone Cold Steve Austin era
Yeah, that was his first
in
title.
terms of his main event run. So yeah, one of those two. I have a lot of fond memories of those. One of the Shawn, I remember later. I didn't see it live. One of the Shawn Michaels Undertaker
The first
matches was
one.
really good.
Yeah. WrestleMania 25, I
Well,
think it
the other
is.
one was really good too because wasn't that
I think they're
career
both
versus
great.
streak?
But I think like the first one is recognized as one of the greatest of
Yeah.
all time by a lot of
So
people. Yeah.
I don't know which one it was, but I remember seeing that later, like after because I wasn't watching it live at that point. And I thought it was really good. Even
Batista Triple H, I love that one.
the first Rock John Cena fight, I remember being interested in,
Yeah.
even at the time. I'd been out of the game for a few years, but that once in a lifetime is how they build it up, and I remember being really interested in that. And then they did it again the next year, so it was twice
Yeah.
in a lifetime, but
Right.
whatever.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones, and even a triple threat match, and it's not one that is you'll ever see on any programming nowadays. But Chris Benoit at WrestleMania 20, winning the world heavyweight title from Triple H and Shawn Michaels. I remember as a kid, it even made me tear up watching Eddie Guerrero and Chris
Yeah.
Benoit embrace in the ring.
Mm,
And now it just makes me tear up for other reasons. It's
yeah.
just like it's like one of those things that kind of ruins the obviously a lot, not for Eddie Guerrero, but Chris Benoit's story
Yeah.
just very tragic. So it's kind of hard to say that's one of your favorites, but it is a match that as a kid I remember. The WrestleMania 20 is the WrestleMania as a kid I have the fondest memories because I had my whole family over. We had a big watch party. I remember The Undertaker returning as the dead man. Like it was just, I mean, it was John Cena's first WrestleMania match. He wins the U.S. title with the brass knucks on Big Show. You had that really terrible Brock Lesnar Goldberg match. I mean, it was a little bit of everything.
And conveniently enough, that's the WrestleMania I'm heading toward, Noah, WrestleMania 20 on my rewatch series. So I'm definitely
Yeah.
excited for that. But I just needed a trip down memory lane. And are you going to tune into any of it this weekend?
Yeah, I plan on at least having it on. You know, I
Yeah.
don't know how close I'll be paying attention to some of it. Apparently, night one, I was reading an article today about this actually. Night one is opening with John Cena as in the, is in
Wow.
the
First
U.S. title
match.
match. Apparently so. So
Okay.
that's interesting. Actually, the match I might be most looking forward to because I keep seeing TikToks about this rivalry. The Mysterios going
Yeah,
at it.
I watched it on Raw the other
Dude,
night,
for some
actually.
reason, my TikTok, like I know I've been having more like we've been joking around
Yeah.
about the WWE content popping up, but that rivalry is like what I get the most of. And I don't know if it's because I think Rhea Ripley is, yeah, well, I don't know if it's because of that or what, but I've been intrigued. I'm like, you know what? I kind of fuck with what Dominic's doing. I mean, he really
He's
just
such a
makes
good
you want to
heel,
hate him.
dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I watched last night where he was yelling at his mom and
Yeah.
sister, and Ray finally decked him. It was pretty badass. So
It's fun stuff. Fun stuff.
yeah, so I'll definitely be probably tuning in. I think at some point, Dominic, there may be. I could see you getting the itch to turn that little rewatch thing you're doing into
It just
an
keeps going.
well, just turn it into a series. You know, like I mean, imagine if you could share your thoughts as you rewatch with the world.
Ah.
I don't know how it'd be
No.
done. It'd be a little hard to do it under an MMA platform, but I do have some
Okay.
ideas. Maybe I'll talk to you off recording. So
Alrighty. I see you.
yeah. So my name's No Bigger. That's Dominic Slee. We are but just two of the below average Joes, and we'll see you guys on Monday.